I noted that Nunavut continues to need help on the human resource front, especially nurses and lab technicians.
Tonight, like a long winter, the problems from the COVID-19 pandemic never end.
To say that Canada, for example, doesn't have a death sentence, it does. We hear about it when people commit suicide, overdoses.
An inmate in a provincial jail with reported mental health issues is transferred to a hospital.
For me, as an Indigenous hockey player, there's not many Indigenous players playing, especially in the United States. So a big piece for me is to try to show that you can do it, and we want to make hockey more diverse.
And fierce rivals Canada and the U.S. name their women's Olympic hockey teams. Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward. Welcome to APTN National News. A Northern Ontario First Nation has been dealing with a major COVID-19 outbreak for almost 2 weeks. The federal government says it deployed military reinforcements to assist with the situation in Bearskin Lake over the weekend. However, those on the ground say this is not exactly accurate. APTN's Fraser Needham has more.
Minister of Emergency Preparedness Bill Blair's office says the military has been assisting Bearskin Lake First Nation since Sunday. The Omicron-stricken community needs help with everything from chopping wood for heat and hauling food and water. The government says there are now as many as 6 military personnel in the community. However, those in Bearskin Lake say the Trudeau government is misleading the public. The soldiers who are assisting are Canadian Rangers. Those are part-time reservists who live in the local area. And Charles Fox says the government is only further damaging an already fractured relationship by not being totally honest.
Total indifference to the First Nations situation. I expected more of a humane response to say, we're here for you, truth and reconciliation, we're here. We're going to live up to that mantra. Not evident.
Local MPP for the area, Saul Mamakwa, agrees Ottawa is not living up to the community's request for outside military help.
It wasn't right to for the government to say that they had boots on the ground without really having boots on the ground. And I think that's kind of like saying it's been done to First Nations time and time again for decades, for centuries, whereby, governments say things in public without really nothing happening.
More than half of Bearskin Lake's 400 residents are infected with the Omicron variant. The First Nation is located about 600 kilometers north of Thunder Bay. Fraser Needham, APTN National News, Ottawa.
Nunavut remains in lockdown with active COVID-19 cases in nearly half of the Nunavut's communities. Government officials took questions from reporters today and confirmed that the healthcare crisis is being made tougher by a human resources crisis. Here's Ken Driscoll with more.
There are now active cases of COVID-19 in 13 of Nunavut's 25 communities. Testing has been reduced to allow the healthcare system to still function. Schools remain closed, as do non-essential offices. 7 people are in hospital. Nunavut's premier had a conference call with the Prime Minister and other premiers yesterday. He repeated his plea for staffing help.
I noted that Nunavut continues to need help on the human resource front, especially nurses and lab technicians. I also stressed the need to address our housing gap. Overcrowding is severely impacting the spread of COVID-19 in our communities.
The government confirmed today that one of the reasons they need help is that 5 of the 8 lab technicians who worked at the hospital in Iqaluit resigned in November and December. Nunavut's chief public health officer didn't know offhand how many lab technicians there are at the hospital right now.
I don't know the exact number, but we've only been able to, Qikiqtani General Hospital has only been able to hire 1 since then.
While the ministers were in Iqaluit, Nunavummiut have Ottawa on their minds. The Embassy West Senior Living Complex in Ottawa has clients from Nunavut, and it's undergoing an outbreak of COVID-19 right now.
To date, we've had 8 residents that have been infected with COVID. However, one of them is now considered recovered, so there's 7 currently. We have
been monitoring the situation closely. We've put in place an additional staff member on site to assist during this especially stressful period.
Nunavut now has 192 active cases of COVID, at least. Testing was scaled back last week, so that number is more of an educated guess than a statistic. For now, Nunavut remains on lockdown, and it seems it'll stay that way for some time to come. Kent Driscoll, APTN National News, Iqaluit.
In Quebec, recent polls reveal Premier Francois Legault's popularity tanking over his handling of the COVID-19 pandemic. That rating took another dip today. That's because Legault announced Quebec will be the first province in Canada issuing fines to the unvaccinated. Lindsay Richardson joins us from Montreal with more. Lindsay, thanks for being with us. This was not the announcement everyone was expecting today.
No, Dennis, it's been another whirlwind 24 hours. And in that 24-hour cycle, we've been focused on the fact that our National Director of Public Health submitted a resignation letter to the Premier yesterday. So this is what we thought he'd be addressing during this afternoon's press conference. And he did, saying that Dr. Horacio Arruda is stepping down, citing strain of the job, that he'll be taking a couple of months off, and then an interim director has been appointed in his place. But obviously, most of the discussion and controversy seemed to come up with this announcement he slipped in that he will start penalizing the province's unvaccinated in the coming weeks.
And that's a pretty unprecedented move. What do we know so far about this plan?
Well, first and foremost, Dennis, this is the first Canadian province to enforce sanctions or penalties on its unvaccinated population. No other province or territory in Canada has instituted a similar system. So even though it is a penalty, and Legault says he will be fining people who have not had their first dose of the vaccine or do not have a medical exemption, he's calling it a health contribution. And that's because of the enormous strain being put on the healthcare system, reportedly due to the fact that there's still a bit of a lag in the vaccination rates. So these people will be fined a quote unquote significant amount. We haven't attributed a dollar amount yet. That is still being worked out, but we'll see in the coming weeks what happens. It was a very quick announcement, and it sounds like there are still quite a few kinks to be worked out on the provincial side.
No kidding. The announcement is only a few hours old, but I understand Quebec's already dealing with some pretty strong reactions.
Yeah, definitely. Now, in the last week, several health experts have gone on record speaking to the media saying that the only way to really tackle COVID-19 spread in this fifth wave would be to start penalizing the unvaccinated. I don't think anybody really expected it to materialize in this way, but other measures that Quebec has implemented in the recent weeks to drive up their vaccination rates have proven to be effective. For example, Quebec's health minister announced that people would have to present their vaccination passports in order to access the province's pot and liquor stores. And after that announcement was made, first dose appointments actually quadrupled. So we'll have to keep an eye on those appointment numbers in the coming weeks. We'll see what happens. Still a lot of unknowns. And so it's more of a stern warning at this point, but it remains to be seen whether it will have a tangible effect.
Well, quite the developments indeed there, Lindsay. Appreciate you taking some time to break it down for us.
Thanks, Dennis.
We'd like to hear what you think about taxing people who are unvaccinated. Here's how you can continue the conversation. You can send your emails to news@aptn.ca or leave a comment on our website. That's aptnnews.ca. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. Follow APTN News to join the conversation and see our latest stories. A BC Supreme Court has found that Rio Tinto Alcan infringed on the rights of 2 First Nations and harmed their fisheries. Rio Tinto says they will work with the Saikas and Stellarton First Nations to improve the Nechico River's health. APTN's Lee Wilson reports.
For years, the Saikas and Stellarton First Nations have tried to make Rio Tinto and the governments acknowledged the devastating impacts of the Kenny Dam on the Nechako River and its fisheries in northwest British Columbia. On Friday, a BC Supreme Court decision stated the Kenny Dam has altered the natural flow of the river and contributed to the substantial decline of sockeye salmon and the nearly extinct Nechako white sturgeon. Jackie Thomas is the named plaintiff and was SICA's chief counselor at the time the case was brought against Rio Tinto Alcan in 2011. She is pleased with the decision.
That dam has had a major impact on those fish in our river. Yes, that was very important. We don't have to argue about it anymore and spend energy on that question.
In 1952, the Kenny Dam was built by Alcan to power an aluminum smelter in Kitimat. The large rock-filled Nechako Reservoir diverts water to Rio Tinto's power station in Kimano. Thomas said as the company filled the dam, there was no flow to the Nechako River.
There was actually no water for a number of years. There was no Nechako River. Everything was filling the reservoir for, I think it took 2.5 or 3 years to fill.
The nations were also seeking an order to have Rio Tinto restore the original flow to the Nechako River, which was not granted in this decision. An email statement to APTN News, a Rio Tinto spokesperson said they are committed to working with First Nations, governments, and stakeholders. Rio Tinto remains fully committed to working with Saikas, the Latin nations, and other First Nations in the watershed to build a mutually beneficial, respectful, transparent relationship in the spirit of reconciliation. Improving the health of the Nechako River is a goal we all share, and we are actively engaged with First Nation communities on this priority. In the ruling, the judge ruled that Rio Tinto was not legally responsible, since the dam was authorized by Canada and the BC governments. The court added, both governments have an obligation to protect the nation's Aboriginal right to fish and work in good faith to address the harms. We contacted both the federal and provincial governments, but did not hear back before airtime. Jackie Thomas says, the decision has helped in land and title claims in some areas, but there is more work that needs to be done.
This is only one legal file that we hold, that we're holding, but we have been focused on reconciliation and settling the land question. And this will provide some relief for that, but it also asks more questions. It will bring the provincial and federal governments to us and help and deal with this.
The nations will be reviewing the court decision in coming weeks and deciding their next steps. Lee Wilson, APTN National News, Kitimat.
Coming up, an unsolved murder and a video confession. Stick around. Welcome back. A potential witness took to Facebook to talk about what he said happened the night a man was murdered in the remote community of Fort Simpson, Northwest Territories. Our reporter Charlotte Moore-Jacobs explains.
Billy Cholo is remembered by friends for his love of the land and sense of humor, but no one has ever been charged for his murder. On December 30th, a potential witness took to Facebook Live in a video confession. Community member Troy Bradbury saw the video.
Basically stating that he was a witness and that he was pretty distraught about not coming forth, and he was scared about how people were feeling about him.
In the video, the man states that he didn't know who to talk to, and he wanted his family to be all right and have peace for him. The man did not respond to APTN's request for an interview. Cholo, age 45, was found dead in a Fort Simpson gazebo in January of 2014. Bradbury wants to keep the case in the public eye with a sticker campaign that reads, "Who killed Billy Cholo?"
It's a small town, so there's been numerous rumors on who did it, who witnessed it, what actually happened. I just hope that the light is shed on the case so that we don't have to sit there and guess at this anymore.
As first reported by Cabin Radio News, the RCMP's Sergeant Jason Hurley told the news outlet the investigation into Cholo's death is still open and officers will continue to look into public tips.
I know the RCMP have been trying hard, but most of those original investigators, they're gone. Like, we've gone through 3 batches of RCMP since that date, so don't really know who's taking care of it anymore.
In 2014, RCMP arrested an unidentified individual in connection with the case, but that person was later released. Charlotte Moore-Jacobs, APTN National News, Yellowknife.
And APTN News was able to view the Facebook Live, but unable to capture the video before it was deleted. The Congress of Aboriginal Peoples is calling on the federal and provincial governments to turn over control of the justice system to Indigenous hands. National Vice Chief Kim Bowden says a recent case in Saskatchewan has made it clear that the treatment of Indigenous people in correctional facilities will not change without drastic action. APTN's Leanne Sanders reports.
Pine Grove Correctional Centre is a provincial jail for women in Prince Albert. The facility houses 52 inmates and is the setting for a recent case of alleged abuse against an Indigenous inmate. Advocate Kim Bowden is calling for an overhaul of the justice system after a mentally ill Métis woman was allegedly held in solitary confinement for over a month. Bowden says the 21-year-old woman was also subjected to mental and physical abuse by Pine Grove guards, but is doing significantly better since being transferred to Battleford Hospital for mental health treatment. He says the Aboriginal community needs to take ownership of the justice system to put an end to this kind of abuse.
And same way as we're taking, children in care, for example, under was Bill C-92. When they took that responsibility away and handed over to First Nations and Indigenous people in Canada. We need to do that when it comes to the justice system, and I really believe that's the only way we can sort of straighten out this mess, because it's just getting worse.
Bowden says he's writing a letter to officials at both the federal and provincial levels calling for change. He says abuse in correctional facilities is having dire consequences.
To say that Canada, for example, doesn't have a death sentence, it does. We hear about it when people commit suicide, overdoses, being treated like, complete inhumane conditions. That's the kind of things that we hear. And then at the end of it, they literally lose their lives. And there's been numerous people who've lost their lives who haven't been tried. They haven't even went through court. They're just on remand.
Leanne Sanders, APTN National News, Saskatoon.
And we contacted Saskatchewan's Ministry of Corrections, Policing and Public Safety for updates, but haven't heard back. Time now for another quick break. Still to come, one of the founders of the American Indian movement has passed away. Stick around. Welcome back. Time now for our photo of the day. And how about this beautiful shot from Ganawage? Our viewer, Ahente Foot, was able to take this while ice fishing as the sun was setting and the weather was a chilly -27. That's not that cold. Hope you got some fish for your effort. Send your photos to share at aptn.ca. Send us your adventures, family, culture, pets, and all things amazing for the chance to be our next photo of the day. Now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Starting on the east coast, 0 with snow in Halifax, sunny and 8 below in St. John's. -23 with snow in Nain, flurries and 17 below for Happy Valley, Goose Bay. -2 and snow in Montreal, snow and 12 below in Chibougamau. -6 with snow for Sault Ste. Marie, 11 below and flurries in North Bay. -12 in Thunder Bay, 13 below for Sioux Lookout. -22 under sunny skies in God's Lake, 18 below with snow in Norway House. -7 in Winnipeg with snow, 5 below and snow in Brandon. Partly cloudy and +3 for Regina, 0 in Saskatoon. -3 in Meadow Lake, 5 below with snow in Buffalo Narrows. In northern Alberta, -5 and snow for Fort McMurray, +1 with showers in Grand Prairie, 11 above for Medicine Hat and Lethbridge, 9 in Calgary. +10 with showers in Vancouver, 2 in Penticton with rain, +4 and rain for Prince George. -24 with snow in Old Crow, 13 below in Whitehorse. -21 with snow in Yellowknife and Norman Wells. 26 below with flurries in Sax Harbor, -25 and snow in Paulatuck. Sunny and 33 below in Whale Cove, -34 in Chesterfield, -29 in Resolute, 34 below in Arctic Bay. Well, one of the last remaining living founders of the American Indian movement in the United States has passed on. Family of Clyde Belcourt announced his passing today. Belcourt, his brother Vernon, and Dennis Banks, Russell Means, and Eddie Benton Benai founded the American Indian movement in the 1960s. In the mid-70s, AIM occupied the U.S. Bureau of Indian Affairs in Washington, D.C., and engaged in the armed occupation of Wounded Knee, South Dakota, which resulted in a number of deaths. Belcourt had been fighting prostate cancer. He was 85. Well, the 2022 Winter Olympics in Beijing are starting in just under a month. Olympic teams are being finalized, and among them are Indigenous athletes, including the Canadian and American women's hockey teams. Team Canada announced their players earlier today. Among them is Jocelyn Roque, a Métis player from St. Anne, Manitoba. She was named the Manitoba Indigenous Female Athlete of the Decade in 2021 and the Manitoba Aboriginal Sports and Recreation Council. And in 2018, she won the Tom Longboat Award. And for the first time, an Indigenous player will be on the American women's hockey team. Abby Rock is a member of the Wahnapitae First Nation in Ontario, but was born and raised in Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan. Rock hopes she can inspire other Indigenous hockey players.
For me, as an Indigenous hockey player, there's not many Indigenous players playing, especially in the United States. So a big piece for me is to try to show that you can do it. And we want to make hockey more diverse. We would love to have more BIPOC players playing, and we want to make hockey more accessible. And I think that's a big thing for me, and a reason I love to play is to just show that everybody can play.
And congrats to both of them. Face to Face is back with new episodes tonight. Coming up right after the news, longtime journalist Betty Ann Adam is our guest. Adam is also the chair of the 60 Scoop Indigenous Society of Saskatchewan. The group just released a video detailing the connections between the 60 Scoop and missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls.
It starts with the residential schools, and that was often leading to former students whose children got scooped, and then those same families would have people who were dying in this terrible scourge of MMIW. And we thought it was important that Canadians understand that these things don't happen in silos. All of the issues that the negative issues that face Indigenous people can be linked to government policy.
You can watch an entire episode of Face to Face right here in less than 2 minutes' time. That is all the time we have for your APTN National News for this Tuesday. For news anytime, you can visit our website, aptnnews.ca. And be sure to tune in here tomorrow live at 3 p.m. Eastern Time for In Focus with Melissa Ridgen. She'll be looking at the booming Indigenous economy. Should be good. I'm Dennis Ward. Thanks for being with us. Have a great night.